show is sponsored by HiveMind CRM. It is more than just a CRM. It is a real estate and business mastermind that comes with an all-in-one CRM. You can have unlimited websites and users. You can call, text, RVM, and email all in one user interface. And you can set up custom automations for any type and multiple businesses. 65% of companies start using a CRM system within the first 5 years of business. Once implemented, the HiveMind will save you on marketing, give you more time, and make more money. One of our users had his first $100,000 month using our system in June. We want to see you automate and accelerate your business. Text us at 210-972-1842 for future meetings, and of course to get our $1 course on how to make more than 6 figures on one land deal. You can schedule your free demo today at hivemindcrm.io.
Hey, we're here today with Axel Meierhoefer from Northern Germany, but no longer there, but he's out of San Diego. We're going to talk about that. We're going to have a conversation today. I love talking to new people and learning new things, just because I'm a sponge of information, and I like acquiring new information. So I like talking to people that have been doing things for a long time and have the experience too, because they got experience. So first question I always start off with is, how did you end up in real estate? And if you want to, you can even mention how you ended up in the United States, since you're from Northern Germany too. I'm sure that's an interesting story.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, maybe we start with the second part first. How do we end here? I was in the Air Force in Germany and found out, because I was in aircraft testing, so we first got the training and then started flying, and then I found out there is testing, and I got into testing, and part of that is when these black boxes that they put in the planes, most of them are made or used to be made by American companies. So if you are in testing and you want to basically help to integrate one of those boxes into the plane that you're flying, you have to go to the company, because there is no place where you could get training other than from the company itself. So my wife and I, and at the time my tiny little baby daughter, we came over to the US to different locations at these companies. Basically, the deal was I go for like 4 weeks of training, sitting in the classroom most of the time, and daughter and wife go shopping and beach and pool and stuff like that. And most of these places were in Texas and in California, so most of the time good weather and so forth. And the question became, isn't there a way to maybe do this for a little longer period of time, especially as long as our daughter is still small? And I looked at it and found out there is actually an exchange program between the US Air Force and the German Air Force. I applied, was very lucky to be chosen for that, and then came over to join a US Air Force unit in New Mexico. And that was supposed to only be like 2, maybe 3 years, and it ended up being more than 6 years. And by the time I had created a lot of relationships, so when I said, okay, well, I'm getting to the point where you can no longer fly for physical reasons just because it's too demanding, and I don't want to stay in the Air Force without flying. But if I wanted to stay in the US, I need somebody to sponsor me for like a green card and job and all that kind of stuff. And there was a company in Santa Barbara that said, yeah, we take you, we love you, we want you. So I was stupid enough to not even really take a vacation. So we basically turned in the uniform, and like first of the next month started the new job. Did that for a couple of years, and then realized I would like to have the opportunity to be in charge myself. Right? I've basically followed other people's orders for all my life, pretty much, first in school and then in the Air Force, and pretty much in that software company too. And I started my own consulting business, but that brought up the question, okay, well, if you run a business, will you do this for the rest of your life, or is there ever a point where you can basically either dial back or retire? And I thought, well, what can I do? Now, keep in mind, I started that in 2005, and 2002-03, the stock market kind of blew up.
Yeah.
So that wasn't really an option, and I started looking around. And I always say the funny part is funny. I find it personally still funny. I was like, okay, so who could I look to? Who would be somebody who could give or have some inspiration? So for some strange reason, there must have been at the time where there was one of those big Terminator movies or stuff like that going on. Yeah. So Arnold became like, okay, I wonder what he does with all the money he's making. I looked into it, and most people probably don't know, but at the time and beyond that, and probably still today, he is one of the largest real estate owners in California. because he used a lot of his money and bought real estate with it. Yep. And I thought, well, he's an immigrant. Yes, Austria, not Germany, but close enough, right? And he's making money and investing it in real estate. And then he became governor, which was crazy too, So I thought, well, let's see if this is actually something for real or only for rich people, and started learning about it, and then started investing a little bit in it. And, I was still in the military getting moved around, and I had seen several times that sometimes you rent, sometimes you live on base, sometimes you buy something. So it wasn't completely strange. Yeah, that's how I got into it. And at some point I started, this is kind of my personality, I guess, initially it was, okay, this is an option. And then I really wanted to find out, and I dug deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, and ultimately kept telling people stories about it. And they said, oh, you should put this out there. You should go to a website. You should do this and that. And it took quite a while, but in 2019, I said, okay, I think I have enough experience. I feel comfortable helping other people. Now we can do that. And then Mr. Pandemic came along and gave me more time. So, so ever since been basically doing IdealWealthGrower and really enjoying it.
No, it's an amazing story. So I love that you brought up Arnold too, because Arnold, I heard something about Arnold too, is that he was actually, he bought like a 4-unit before he even became an actor, and he made $1 million just on that 4-unit before he even became a Hollywood celebrity. So there's a lot of interesting stories that come along with that. And him just
he bought that basically with money from bodybuilding.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, most people don't know that he was a very buff guy, but his first, like, if you were to separate, first life, second life, third life, the first life was bodybuilding all the way 100%. To the universe and all that. And he became a professional bodybuilder, partnered up for some nutritional supplement stuff. And that's the first part where he did what you just said. And then he went into acting, or he was recruited into acting. If you watch, or if you go on YouTube and look at any of the very early, like the Barbarian, you would never think that he would actually become the person he became. It's so moronic. Like, I don't know if they just cast him that way, but
the Barbarian's a rough movie.
Right. I mean, he is super buff, but I mean, acting is not the big thing in it. But, and then he had the political career. So yeah, it's an amazing story.
It's an amazing story, but let's kind of jump on your story. So one of the things that I love about it is that you wanted to learn more about it. So let's talk about that. What are some resources to learn more about 1031 exchange and like those preliminary thought processes of creating wealth? Like, is there books, podcasts you recommend? I know you're a podcast host too, so I'm sure you probably allude in that too in your podcast.
Yeah, we're talking about it in the podcast, although I bring people onto the podcast trying to give a little bit of a variety, because one of the things that I learned, like the big underlying lessons, is you have to initially identify what are you going to be comfortable with as the area, or some people used to call it a niche that they really wanted to get in deep.
Yep.
Right, because you can do storage units or apartments or flipping, or I mean, a million different things. So 100%. For me, that was an important thing. So I used to have it in the background. I don't think it's there anymore. It's a book called Turnkey Revolution.
Okay.
Which helped me a lot, because Chris Closure, he is one of the founders of what is now called REI Nation, but they used to be called Memphis Invest, because they started out as a company that did turnkey in real estate, residential real estate in Memphis, and then spread from there. But what Chris did really well is he described in the book what are all the things that you want to be aware of and check into and make sure that they're in the right way and right place if you intend to do turnkey investing.
Yeah.
Which the first step is to say, okay, I want to be in residential real estate, rather than any of the other things. And if you then say residential real estate and you're in Temecula, I'm in San Diego, we know we're talking about $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 median price. Well, if you say, okay, how can I invest into that with a normal investment approach of 20% down, 80% finance? Well, if you take your $500,000, $600,000 house, that's $100,000, $120,000, $150,000 down payment. Now, at least I have to say, most of the people that I work with, they don't run around with that kind of money in their back pocket.
100%.
So that basically means you have to go somewhere else, which is the whole turnkey idea, is to say, if I find an organization who does the things that if I were close enough, would do myself, then I can work with them. Yes, they get a little bit of money for their work, it's fair, but I can invest in properties that I would otherwise be way too far away from to ever get involved with. And that's kind of the turnkey model. And so initially, when people consider working with me or joining our little tribe or anything like that, our hive, I should probably say in this case, that's the determination to say, okay, is this particular approach where we invest in residential real estate from single family home to fourplex, and that's it.
Yeah.
With partners where we can find properties that really perform, not just any property, but a property that serves the purpose of making us cash flow. That's the thing, you know.
So are you taking more of like a management opportunity with the partnering with the person that has the money that wants to move it, or what's your position on that?
Well, in IdealWealthGrower, the thing that we are currently offering, we're working on doing something in addition, but right now we're offering basically mentoring, which means I call that taking somebody by the hand. And it's almost, if we weren't, you know, like on Zoom, we would literally kind of do this in a way for finding out, what do we want? Is this the right approach? And let's just say for a moment, yes, residential real estate and the turnkey model is the right approach. Now I'm opening up my network to the turnkey providers that I invest with, the insurance providers I use, the lenders that I use,
100%.
All the people, because like I said, I started this in 2005, and so over all these years, developed a lot of relationships. And it's always, if Daniel Martinez says, hey, I want to join Axel, and I say, hey, Eric, I have Daniel Martinez, he's one of my hive members. Can you help him get the property that we saw on your website? It's a little different than if you just surf around and you find the property and you say, hey, I'm Dan and I want to see if this property is for me, because there is no connection.
Yeah.
Doesn't change the property, but it changes the relationship right from the get-go, right? And so, yeah, that's basically how it works. And the thing that we are working on to add, because you can imagine this handholding is not scalable to thousands of people. So one thing we want to add is kind of like an online program where people can kind of learn and see what we do until we have the next open slot, and then they can start using that knowledge, and everything else is obviously then constantly available to everyone to actually get into the activity of investing. Because most people, I really have to say, most people that we're working with, they haven't done a whole lot of deals yet.
Yeah. They might still have their 9-to-5 job. They might be high income earners. They might be just that person bringing a lot of revenue.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, the philosophy from the IdealWealthGrower perspective is to say, I like to first coach and mentor you to find out, number one, is our approach suitable for you? And if that's a yes, what is your time freedom point number? How much cash flow on a monthly basis do you want to actually accomplish so that it covers all your costs and expenses of your regular daily life as it is today? And when we know what that is, what that number is, and where you are right now, we can make a plan, which I call the journey. What do we need to do step by step to reach that point, that milestone? Right. And if you imagine for a second, we reach that milestone, that is the time on the calendar when that cash flow, passive income comes in every month. And then you have the freedom to say, okay, do I want to keep my job? Do I do half my job? Do I do something that doesn't pay, but I love it, or anything like that? Because if you think about it, from that moment on, from that time freedom point moment, you will probably still next year increase the rent on a few of your properties. And that is almost 100% more in your pocket, right? If you have a situation where you say, okay, I'm making, let's say, $4,000 cash flow a month, and the government says we have 8% inflation. And then you say, okay, 4,000, 8%, 10% is about roughly $400, $350. I have 10 properties. I only need to increase my rent by $35 each, which is reasonable. And I have the money. So inflation, I don't care.
Yeah.
And this is going to be true forever, right? Basically. So that's what we're trying to do, is get people to first determine, is it the right approach? do we like it? Do we want to do it? And then what's the journey to get to the first milestone?
So, and you made a really good point early on as far as California not being a good cash flow market. So what markets are you in currently, and what markets do you recommend to go into as far as to find good properties that make sense to get good cash flow?
Well, we are in Idaho, Illinois, Ohio, Florida, Alabama. We looked into Missouri, but never did it. And I'm right now at the edge, or at the almost there to maybe do something in Texas. I've always resisted Texas for the property taxes, but I'm also aware of the economic development, and so we could probably overcome the property tax situation they have there with the right deal. So I don't have it yet, and I'm always, for any one of those things, I think it's an important distinguishing factor is I always want to do these things first myself. Right?
Yeah, 100%.
Quick example, I have found out that there is a path to do the turnkey model internationally. And I'm somebody who cares about the environment. So I found an organization in the Caribbean that offers eco-friendly tiny houses, brand new, in the turnkey model.
Wow.
So I said, okay, I'm going to try this myself with my money. And if it all works the way I think it should, then I can open it up to our hive. Almost the tribe, our hive. And I found out these guys don't have their shit together. Now, I'm still going to get the house, but I don't want to expose any of my mentoring clients to the pain that I've already gone through. And can it be fixed? Yes. Would I be happy to help them, this organization, to fix it? Yes. But until it's fixed, I would never refer anyone into that.
There's a lag with certain upcoming markets. Like there's even one. I'm really glad you're saying hive, because that's what we call our group. Our group is the hive, so it's kind of cool you're using the hive as your little name here. But one of our clients, he's doing print. He's doing the 3D printed house. He bought the machine for a 3D printed house, and he's looking for land to build that. Like it's still early on, but it could easily change. And same thing with tiny homes. Like it's still too early on, and a lot of people in that niche haven't necessarily found their footing yet. Whereas single family, multifamily, they have their strong footing, where that their processes in general are already set in stone. Like it's all set in stone 100%. So and even Airbnb is finding their footing. I think they're still in the midst of finding their footing. Where's I going with this? Oh, I was going with this as far as I'm really glad you're testing out the market, because the market can easily sway in different ways, and it might take a couple of years for those specialized niches to find their footing and how they actually do their business in general. Because there's always people that they're trailblazers. They create the path, but they're also creating problems behind them that usually they're fixing themselves, or people have to deal with them behind them. So I commend you on that part. 100%.
Yeah, thank you. And I mean, the part about it is, for one, I want to check it out myself, but there's also a component of expectations and preparation.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like, so when I can say, okay, well, there is this opportunity after I have actually gone through the whole thing and the house has been built, and I can see that the renting and management and stuff works. I mean, as you said completely correctly, it's going to be probably 15, 18 months before I can actually even say, yep, this is where we are, and this is maybe the point for somebody to consider. But there is a difference if I say, hey, Daniel, there is going to be a pretty painful process to even just setting up a bank account and getting a business set up. But if we don't do that, we can't use financing. If we can't use financing, then the deal is not nearly as juicy as it would otherwise be. Now, if we do the financing, it's international financing, is more expensive than in the US. And the paperwork is at least as horrible, if not more so horrible than what we used to. So if I set all these expectations and then these things happen, and even if they happen a little better, a little smoother, it's expected. If on the other hand, I'm just saying, okay, well, it's the same thing like a turnkey deal in Ohio, and it's not, then obviously it's not just a matter of reputation, it's also people get frustrated. And any kind of, when your own money is involved, anything that has your money and frustration, those two things should ideally stay away from each other, right? And so that's part of the reason why I want to always first figure it out. And that doesn't mean things never go wrong, But if you've done it a bunch of times and you have built the relationship and you've seen what can happen and so forth, then it's a little easier to handle.
Yeah. There's a saying, it's like once you put your own money into it, you're going to pay attention a lot more.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, what that misses is if you know where to pay attention, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of my role as the mentor, to say, okay, there are a million things that you could look at, but the important ones are these 5.
Yeah, no, that's good. How do you feel about Airbnbs? Because I think a lot of what you're doing is rentals. Have you dabbled into Airbnbs at all as far as getting cash flow from that?
Yeah, I do, and I like it. I like the idea, I like the fundamental approach. But again, if the strategy holds, which I believe it does, under this understanding of turnkey, then you want to have, to stay with Airbnb terminology, a professional superhost, right? Because again, if I find a property, let's just take an example. I find a nice 4-bedroom, 2-bath property in a suitable Airbnb location for $200,000, just as an example.
Yeah,
right? It's probably not going to be where you and I live.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. So that means we are at the same point now. It's not just a regular residential property management company. Now I need somebody who does Airbnb superhost kind of property management. And I do this. I'm very fortunate to have somebody who does that for me in certain market. And obviously what your audience might be interested in, you've got to be willing to give this organization 25 to 30% of your income, of your revenue.
Yeah.
Why? Because anybody who ever looks at, okay, how does the marketing, how does the engagement, how do I even become a superhost for any kind of Airbnb or VRBO offering, is based on engagement and activity. And it's way off the charts more than compared to like collecting the rent once a month for years and years and years, and every once in a while taking a maintenance call.
It's a whole other job.
Yeah, it's a whole different thing. But if you say, I want to be, on the one hand, Daniel Martinez, the king of the Martinez investment empire, but I'm the king. The king doesn't do the work.
Yeah.
Right? Or the queen for that matter, too, So if somebody is the king or the queen of the empire, which is part of what I'm trying to get my members and my tribal members, my hive members to get to, is not just be an investor. I want you to be the king and the queen of your empire, which means we're setting up an LLC, we're helping you to get a will and a testament. Not that I'm doing it, I'm just pointing them, just like I do for the investments, to all the relationships I had with that, for estate planning, for having an LLC, to ultimately turn it into a series LLC, to have an operations company, to have tax support, to have documentation support, all those pieces. So you can say, I'm the king, Daniel, and everybody is doing their thing. And at the end of the day, it makes cha-ching and money comes into the bank account.
Yeah.
Right? And so that in this Airbnb or short-term rental approach, I'm totally for it, as long as we have the right kind of people, which is basically true, and the organizations is true for all the other pieces too. In that sense, I'm basically proposing short-term rental in the turnkey model.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I really like that you even bring up estate planning. No one thinks about estate planning. No one thinks about it till like they're in like they might get diagnosed with something. And then like, oh yeah, I think about estate planning. It's not necessarily on the forefront of people's minds, because it's not. I mean, it might be something you don't want to think about, but it's something that needs to be done once you start acquiring assets. So that's even huge in itself, because that, I mean, once you get to a point where you start acquiring assets, you got to think of what happens after you're gone. For everybody listening.
But I actually put that point earlier.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right that you want to think about what happens after you're gone. But my example is, let's just say you're on the journey to your time freedom point, and you have 5 or 6 properties, each one varying between 150,000 and 200 in value. That's, you put your 20% money in, that's the value of these properties. So if Daniel Martinez were a lawyer and somebody comes and says, hey, Dan, I fell down the stairs of Axel's house or Danny's house, and I think it's his fault, their stairs are illegal, sue them. they go a little bit on the public records and say, oh man, this Daniel Martinez guy has $1.5 million in assets. That's juicy. I always get 40% if I win the case. Let's sue the ass off of this guy.
Yeah.
Versus they look up and say, we can't even find that this guy owns anything. And after a little more digging, we find, oh yeah, he files taxes for his operating company. Well, if they're really good, they might find out, okay, this operating company owns a bunch of other businesses. But that's about it. And if they go and sue anyway, just based on the address of the property, and that's one of your $150,000 or $200,000 worth properties, even in this super unlikely case that a judge says, yep, it's Danny's fault. But then you say, okay, well, that business just went out of business. That place is done, $150,000 loss, but the rest of your million is still there, or 2 or 3.
Yeah.
That's, and you don't have to die, but you can get sued, especially in our society nowadays. You don't want to wait until somebody says, how much does this Danny guy have that I could siphon off and make him bleed? No. You want to have a structure where any property is only vulnerable for itself and not everything that Danny owns.
Are you recommending trusts?
Well, it depends. You can, some people, I believe you can do a series LLC, but like in California, for example, you have to do a Delaware trust. And the way I recommend to do it is have your assets, the real assets, managed by an operations company as one construct, and have your family trust as a second construct. And then there's something called alignment, where you align basically what your business operations are with your family trust.
Good stuff right there. It's good stuff. Now, I hope people definitely set yourself up with your estate planning, man. That's so important. It's so important, especially when you get assets. So important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, one thing that I find is there is an evolution, right? Like you want to evolve your mindset to become King Dan or Daniel or King Martinez or whatever. Like, so that's a mindset part to say, okay, I am actually sitting on this thing. I am in charge. Right? When you ask me, how did we get here? I said, one of the things when I was working for the software company was this notion, I want to be in charge of my life, my income, my activities, my outcomes. Well, you can have a full-time W-2 job doing your thing for someone, and at the same time building, with our help, for example, to be in charge of your money. How do we make your money work for you with the assets that ultimately sustain not only you when you get your time freedom point, but the rest of your family forever and ever? But that's kind of like the aspect, and being in charge of that, even if you spend currently a bunch of time of your time for a job, the one enables the other sooner or later. Right? That's kind of the mindset part that is important to me. And part of that is then, okay, if you get in charge of what you do with your money, then you want to get in charge of the structure, in charge of the taxation, protect yourself from lawsuits, all those kind of things. It's not all at once. It's an evolution. That's why I call it a journey. We don't start with a massive estate protection plan when you have no assets. But as you start adding and finding them and adding them, we also in parallel build your empire in that sense and your mindset with it.
That's good. That is good. And I learned this with business too. Business is like I said, it's a step by step. It's a ladder. So problems you're dealing with now, they only get bigger and worse as you get bigger and do more revenue, and they don't go away. They just get bigger. Or they change.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's why I say, as your empire grows, you gotta get more people to do it for you. But it's not very common that the king is actually becoming a janitor, or is becoming the accountant, or is becoming the secretary or stuff. And you want to always make sure, if it gets bigger and takes more of my time, I need more people, but not take off the crown and do it yourself.
Here's a question leading off of that. How do you find good people?
Well, one of the things that helps is good interviewing skills.
Okay.
And I don't know where it actually comes from or why this has evolved. I'm originally from Germany, a big proponent. If you think of how did this work in the past, in Europe, it's very common to have what they call an apprenticeship model.
Okay.
So somebody says, hey, you know, I like real estate and I want to do something in real estate, just as an example, it could be any other profession. And so I try to find a master who is giving me a chance to be an apprentice. And during your 1, 2, 3 year apprenticeship, it turns out you find out for yourself if this is the right thing. You find out if you can actually master the skills that are necessary. And then as you get better and better, you actually earn permission to teach other apprentices. What we seem to have done is to say, let's get rid of all of that and just have a 30-minute interview to determine, is Danny the right guy? And I would submit, I don't think you can figure this out that fast. Right, so I use a tool, and if people are interested, I helped the author to develop it. The author is Don Maruska, and he wrote a book called Take Charge of Your Talent. And in the back part of the book, it has what's called a guided conversation with 10 questions. That determines and can help you to determine, is the person that I'm talking to suitable for what I'm looking for? But that only is the foundation, right? You want to say somebody who is actually working for me is suitable for this job. If somebody, for example, is telling you that they need a side gig for a little while because they need to get enough money together to achieve goal ABC, and you're looking for somebody that you want to build your business with for the next 3 to 5 years, it's probably not a good fit. Has nothing to do with the character, dedication, or anything like that. Your goals don't align.
Yeah.
Right? So that is just a simple little example. So on the one hand, the quick answer is interviewing, but it's not just have a conversation, then think of how you feel. It needs to be deeper and more involved in that, and get basically a person to agree to say, okay, well, if we agree that we want to work together, let's do this for 90 days and see how it goes. Right. And there is one thing that we don't use in communication nowadays very often anymore, is earn your place.
Yeah.
That was used to be very common, and now you're almost not allowed to use that term anymore. But I really like it, because I say, if somebody wants to work with me, and I have people working in the Philippines with me, but for years, because I offered them to really learn all kinds of things, because I'm the guide too. If I'm the founder, the king, I need to guide my people to what I want from them. What kind of kingdom do I want, right? But giving them that opportunity and they applying themselves, they will find, and they try. I mean, I've seen this, they didn't tell me, but not initially, but afterwards, they said, well, you know, I wanted to have a few more hours and I tried something else. And I'm now ashamed to tell you that I did this, but I should have asked you if I can get more hours, because that really sucked. Right? But okay, well, then you fell in the trap of what most people do. Now, that also means, for anybody listening, you want to get clear about how do you lead and guide other people. If you want to build a kingdom that is not just you doing all the work by yourself, you have to think a little bit about that too. Right? So are they suitable? Do they have the right skills? Are they willing to basically prove themselves for a little while? And can you actually guide them into the things that you need them to do? And when that fits, you can rinse and repeat over and over and over again.
Man, that was really in depth. I hope everybody got value from that, because in my mind, I'm thinking about all my employees I've ever had since I've been a boss. And like, I'm like listening to you and I'm like, man, I really need to, that was really, really good. That was really,
see, the thing is, I use analogies a lot, and I would say, if you want to have somebody on your team for a good while, it's not just like going out and get ice cream. You really need to want to know, who is this person and what does this person bring to me? Is it really a good fit? And I believe oftentimes, too many cases, people treat it as if they go out and want to just really quick get some ice cream. Then they're disappointed that the flavor was wrong.
Man, this is such a great conversation. And it's not even what we talked about at the beginning. This part here is really, really in depth. This is why I love podcasting right here. This conversation right here. This is
Yeah.
Key conversation points right here. And I love the experience you have. It is amazing because like one thing I'm very aware of, like I've been an entrepreneur for 4 years, and like I'm still young. I'm still very young, and I take it as I operate myself differently depending on who I'm talking to. But I'm always looking for information because there's years of experience that I don't even have to ask you about. I can hear it. I can hear the experience coming from you. And it's very, very good to hear because a lot of people, man, they think they know it all and they don't absorb that information. They just kind of rolls off the shoulder. But me, I'm like, man, I'm taking it all in because it's all good information. What makes me a better leader is by listening to people that have been where I haven't been. And that's what makes me a better leader, a better listener, a better interviewer, a better boss, a better manager. All this stuff culminates into you as an entrepreneur, and you have to take it all in every facet because as a solopreneur, you're doing everything. You might be the accountant, you might be the sales, you might be the CEO. You're doing all this jobs, but as you get bigger and more organized, you have to hire and fill those gaps wherever you're lacking. And that's the point of evolution of becoming a better entrepreneur as a boss, 100%.
Yeah, I totally agree. One little thing I like to add, if you don't mind, is
go ahead.
For that leadership role or role as a leader, I really strongly believe, and I have found that most people, when they're really honest with themselves, would have to say there is room for improvement. And I'm even saying this about myself still to this day, is we need to learn to ask way more questions. If you ask yourself, if anybody's listening and you say, okay, where would I fall on the spectrum as ability to lead? You should be about 70 to 80% questions and the rest answers and explanations and stuff like that. I'm sometimes there, sometimes not, but I'm also old, right? Like you properly identified. But
I didn't say old though.
No, I know how old I am. You know, but I mean, it's not that hard. I did 22 years of Air Force, then I did 5 years of a software company, and I started my business in 2005. You add it all up, you know where you are, right? But the point is, getting to this aspect and getting to really being a leader means you have to ask a lot and hopefully very good questions. If you catch yourself that it's like 50-50, that means you're telling people way too much detail, right? Or you're basically taking way too many things on yourself. Because questions means you are looking for answers, you're not giving answers, right? And so I always recommend for people, I do like leadership mentoring and coaching still a little bit in my consulting business. That's one of the tricky things to learn. And then also you don't want to always only have one question at the tip of your tongue. You know, you need to develop that skill, that muscle on how can I ask insightful, interesting questions so that people want to be part of the conversation and reveal stuff, both solutions and ideas and creations and whatever else it might be that help the business, for example. But that's an important thing when you say, you know, I want to evolve as a leader, is spend a good amount of time learning and developing the muscle of more questions.
More questions. What's crazy about you say about that, I feel like podcasting has really opened my mind because I'm not active listening to ask that next question. And like a lot of these things, I don't come and do this scripted. I don't have a list of questions I ask. I have like 5 or so questions I may ask throughout the interview, but a lot of it is just free flowing off of the give and take of the conversation. So I feel like I exercise that muscle a lot better. And I don't know, I feel like I'm getting better as it goes, but I enjoy doing this because I'm always learning new stuff anyway. And even techniques, it's a good experience, a good exercise.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a guy named Ronald Heifetz. He wrote a really good book about leadership, and a little image that he put in there that I like and keep using, and it might be interesting for your audience as well, is if you imagine general day-to-day as a play on a stage in a theater, then one of the skills, both with asking more questions, but also in general to see what's going on, is the ability to go what's called the meta perspective, or Ronald Heifetz called it, go to the balcony of the theater. Stand at the balcony, look down at the stage with yourself in the play, and see what you see from there. Right? Because when you are in the play, you only have a certain perspective. If you can go to the meta perspective and see the whole play, you can oftentimes see things that you don't recognize or see when you are in the play itself, or your mind is focused on in the play. And for somebody in a leadership role, or the king of the Martinez Empire or something like that, that is an important skill. And ideally, if you really evolve your skill, you want to be able to be in the play and every once in a while kind of build this ability to go to the meta perspective and try to see what's happening while you're also moving in the play. And if you can do that, then you can start anticipating what should be the next step that I'm taking as part of this play of life going on.
Perspective is powerful. That's good. That was a good one. Perspective, man. My mind is going. This is such a great conversation. What is a quote that is yours or somebody else's that you resonate with?
Well, I don't know if it's a quote. I have always used it as the slogan is helping others help themselves become successful.
Helping others help themselves become successful. The one things I've noticed is that you can't help everybody.
Right.
You can't help everybody. And I think it's one of the beauties of interviewing before you talk to people, because if you can eliminate those people that you can't help from the beginning, there's no false expectation that you offered in their mind because you already eliminated them from the get-go. Like, hey, I don't think this is going to work out.
No, you're absolutely right. There's actually an additional little thing that can help you in that is if you can switch your mind from assuming that you have a solution that everybody needs or wants to offering a solution where people can self-identify that they resonate with it and that they want to be part of it. That will eliminate so many that you think you need to engage just to find out that it's not for them, and allows you to focus on those who actually align with what you have to offer.
This is good. We're gonna.
Yeah, marketing people, by the way, hate that, right? Because we are led to believe that social media and marketing, there is billions of people out there, so you will never run out of customers.
Yeah.
Well, in truth, you never run out of leads, but leads aren't customers, right? So if you can get to a point where you say, okay, I do a podcast with Daniel, Daniel's audience listens to it. There might be 5,000 people out there, and 3 or 4 say, wow, that is exactly what I'm looking for. Well, then I don't need to talk to the other 4,900. They might learn something from our conversation. But the important thing is who self-identifies to say, that's what I've been looking for.
And it's just it's a numbers game at that point, getting in front of enough people that they're
right. Well, and then, I mean, at the end or at some point you will say, hey, Axel, how can those who self-identify, you don't say it in those words, but I would say, those of our audience who self-identify after listening to this, if anybody feels the urge to get in touch, what do they do? And I would say, well, you go to IdealWealthGrower.com and in 30 seconds, something pops up to say, click here to schedule a call with Axel and see if what you felt during the podcast is also true after the podcast.
There you go. IdealWealthGrower.com. That's on Facebook, Instagram, and the website, IdealWealthGrower.com.
Right, exactly. It only pops up on the website with the scheduling link, but yeah, exactly.
No, that's really good, man. I really appreciate your time. I know we covered a lot in this call, from the 1031 to leadership, and man, there's a lot that we covered. I really appreciate your time. I appreciate you giving your information to me because I appreciate it. And like I said, I don't do these calls. I don't do these podcasts for everybody else. It's more of a selfish matter. I do it for me because I like getting the information firsthand.
Yeah, absolutely. That's cool. And see, maybe I was able to help yourself become successful.
There you go.
The show is sponsored by The List Guys. Do you need more leads in your local or virtual market? 1 in 10 small businesses don't invest in any kind of marketing. The List Guys have over 35 plus list types to choose from, and you can mix and match any list or criteria. We also use the skip trace list and provide up to 7 numbers and email addresses. Every list you purchase will be scrubbed against previous purchases. The List Guys are here to save you time. Contact the List Guys today at www.1listguys.com. That's www.1listguys.com.
We appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on, man. I hope people find value and reach out to IdealWealthGrower.com.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.